as Monique's giving a handout, that's just a little outline of the presentation that I have, the PowerPoint presentation. So if you can't see the PowerPoint presentation, you will be missing out a little bit. You'll definitely want to move so you can. I got some pictures and stuff that will be helpful. So today we're going to talk about, I titled this, God and Dopamine, subtitle, The Christian and a Technological World. So I titled it God and Dopamine because really that's what a lot of technology is and does. There's kind of a technical use for technology in the day-to-day aspect, for businesses and things like that. That's just, record keeping and communication and things like that. But I'm not really worried about your use of technology at work as much as I am the use of technology in your life and the lives of your kids, because that's where it can really get out of hand and that can affect your brain chemistry a lot, and just the way that the rest of your life functions. And so now what we see today is the young people that are from high school and college age. We're like, okay, why does everything seemingly different? There are a lot of kids, hopefully present company excluded, but you never know. I'm not passing judgment, nor am I releasing you from judgment. But kids in college, high school, and things like that, there is this very decreased rate in which kids are seeking relationships or dating or seeking marriage. A lot of them are just kind of going through and doing whatever they have to do to get to the next step in life, and there's a lot less goal seeking. And a lot of people kind of shake their heads or shrug and go, well, we don't know what's going on. Some circles will say, oh, it's all women's fault. Other circles will say, oh, it's all men's fault. And everybody's pointing the fingers at each other. I think that one of the root causes of all of this is a fundamental misunderstanding of what dopamine is, as well as the corporations of today being very malicious with their manipulation of your dopamine, doing it very, very purposefully in order to make money off of you, your attention, and everything else about you. So that's what I titled this, God and Dopamine, the Christian and a Technological World. I have Ephesians 5:13 through 14a here. But when anything is exposed by the light, it becomes visible. For anything that becomes visible is light. And I put that verse there because my intention with this entire class today, for this presentation, is to hopefully just shed light on what is actually going on. So that way you don't go into anything blind, and you don't raise your kids totally blind or oblivious as to what's going on with technology and corporations and companies, marketing to you and marketing to your kids. When I was going through my undergrad degree, I got into psychology, so this is kind of an area of particular interest to me. They were talking about the psychology of advertisements and looking at the history of the way that advertisements and commercials have been formulated. You go back 50, 60, 70, 80 years. Commercials were just, drink Coca-Cola, it's delicious. Buy this, do this, give us your money, almost verbatim, just that. Telling you, hey, buy our product. That's it. Then as commercials and advertisements continue to evolve, they realize just telling people to go and buy our thing is not really that effective. It works to get our name out there, but name recognition is actually more important than just telling people, buy Coke. They have to know what Coke is. They're more likely to buy Coke when they go to the store and they say, oh, Coke is on the shelf. I know what that is. That's what I'm going to buy. And so commercials started to evolve from just telling you to buy it to just getting their name out there and presenting it in a good light. To where now the Super Bowl is coming up, and it's always this big competition studies that I read in undergrad studying about commercials is that when people know they are being marketed to, the marketing does not work as well. If they don't know, the commercials today are trying to kind of convince you that they're not actually commercials. This is what they seem like the Living Mutual commercials or the Geico commercials and things like that. They have all these characters in commercials. They have the pig, they have the gecko. And they just do all this zany, wacky stuff. They interview the gecko. Oh, I've been doing this for 40 years. You know, you might look at him and go, wow, what is your skincare routine? You look so excellent. And it has nothing to do with insurance, except at the very end. Geico takes 15 minutes to save 15% reward on cars. Because they make you laugh, and then they tell you, hey, by the way, here's our name. That's how you recognize it. But in the study, they would play a commercial for somebody, and they would switch, the methodology that they use. Okay, for this group over here, they're not going to tell them that they're being marketed to. And then they're going to play another commercial, and then afterwards, or a series of commercials is what it was, and then afterwards they ask them to self-rate. Okay, how likely are you to buy this product, or this product, or this product? And then in another group, they said, okay guys, we're sitting you down, we're going to have you watch a whole bunch of commercials. They're all going to, market to you, and they just went through this big long explanation of what the commercials were doing and why. And very, very consistently, everybody who was told they were being marketed to was much less willing to buy any of those products. Because you know what's going on. You're like, you're not going to pull a wool over my eyes. I'm smarter than this, so I'm going to resist it. So that's like commercials now. There's a lot less buy this and more. Let's make them laugh. Let's throw a caveman in here. Let's throw an emu in here, and then just throw a ring and give it a catchy jiggle, and then people will know about it and buy it. They don't have to be told to buy anything anymore. They're trying to convince you that it's not actually a commercial. Now, that's a really long explanation for me to tell you this. This is the point of my presentation today, is I'm trying to shine a light on the darkness that is a lot of technology and a lot of social media, so that you understand what's going on and you can best use the time that you have with technology. And you can teach your kids how to best use their time that they have with technology. And nobody is going into anything, blind or getting taken anywhere. You can be intentional with everything that you're doing with your kids and with yourselves as well. We've got an outline here for us. The first point we're going to cover, God and dopamine, subtitle God's mural design. I don't know how many of you took or remember high school biology, especially parts of the brain and how the brain works and everything, or maybe you look at college work, et cetera, et cetera. We're going to do just a really short overview of this amazing thing that God has created and put into your head, and how all the parts of the brain, they all work together to create you, and how you act, how you think, and how you go about your life. And then next we're going to talk about technology. Technology as a tool or as a device, and how technology affects that wonderful thing that God put in your head called the brain, and how it changes the way that God really intended for you to use that thing called the brain. And then finally, we're going to talk about a godly use of technology. Some things that you can do to try to keep a leash on your technology so that it is not controlling you, you are controlling it. Because I do want to say right up front, this is not a talk that is just going to be technology bad, technology evil, throw away your phones and go live in the woods. Okay? I think technology is amazing. I think that it has done some amazing things. And that it has improved our lives in just an absolutely innumerable amount of ways. Medication and medical field have made amazing advancements with technology. Communications have made amazing advancements with technology. Just learning every aspect of our lives has largely been improved by technology. But as with everything else good in our lives too, if you are using it incorrectly, it's going to be bad for you. And so that's what we want to talk about. It's how to actually have a right use of technology, not just throw it in the garbage and pretend it doesn't exist. Because obviously this world is not about to do that. If you choose to throw away technology, that is your choice. I'm not going to tell you yes or no on that. But if you choose to throw away technology and isolate yourself from that, I think that will cause a lot of other things to be more difficult in your life too. Maybe that's a challenge that you're willing to undertake. But I think that your kids will also be at a very large disadvantage if you just instill in them that all technology is bad. Because if you do that, if you tell your kids, hey, all technology is bad, terrible, and horrible, well, guess what? One day, they're going to find out, oh wait, all technology is not bad. In fact, there's a lot of fun in technology. And if you don't prepare them for all of that fun that you can have with technology and how to partake in it in a reasonable way that doesn't go overboard, they're going to be completely unprepared for opening that door, and it'll be like a Pandora's box. They'll never be able to put the lid back on it. And it'll wind up, in my opinion, worse than it really began. So rather than completely and totally shielding your kids from technology, which I don't think is really possible in this day and age anyway, rather teach them and prepare them how to use it well, just like with everything else in their life too. I've used this example in a sermon before. You can have a really big stick. It's great for firewood. It's not great for smacking your brother with it. I mean, maybe it'll work well, but that's not a good use for it. In the same way, technology can have a good use. It can also have bad uses. And it's very important to be able to discern what those are. And when we talk about technology as a tool versus technology as a device, we'll find out that that can be very difficult. Our first section, God and dopamine. I have a few little subpoints here. We're going to go through God's neural design, like I said. But I was going to talk about what dopamine and another thing that I haven't yet really mentioned yet, serotonin, what those are. They're neurotransmitters. And we're going to talk about, okay, what are neurotransmitters and how does a neuron function with a neurotransmitter? And we're going to talk about how those change your behaviors, behavior reinforcement, learning processes, and we're going to talk about where is it that you come across big releases of dopamine and serotonin. We have God's neural design. Don't get too worried. I'm not going to go through every single section of this. We're going to just first start off by just identifying what these different sections are. We have the frontal lobe that we got on the top left in blue. That is responsible for decision making, problem solving, planning, and voluntary movement. That's the part that you use to think through. The parietal lobe that processes sensory information like touch, temperature, and pain. The parietal lobe and the frontal lobe are right next to each other because that makes it much easier and faster for them to communicate. You can take in all your sensory information, and then your frontal lobe will take that information and decide what to do with it. This is hot. I'm going to take my hand away from it before it gets done. The occipital lobe, primarily responsible for vision. You'll see the occipital lobe is in yellow there on your screen. It is right next to the optical nerve that is in gray right there. It's not labeled, but that's where it is. So that way the optical nerve and the occipital lobe can communicate much faster, which is, of course, an absolutely genius design that somebody thought of. It must have been God, or maybe it was just random chance. Maybe you don't know. The cerebellum is located at the back of the brain. You can see that big yellow lump at the base there. It coordinates movement, balance, and fine motor skills. All of these things work together in tandem with one another so that way you can operate the way that you operate. You can make good choices, you can walk around, you can see, touch, feel things. All of these things are working together, hopefully, for your good. Hopefully you are taking care of your body. doing good things with your life. That's what God intended for you. Of course, you can also use them for evil. That's what God does not intend for you. And yet, they're all there, and they are absolutely wonderful in genius design. Up next, our main concern is not with all those other lobes, but rather with the brainstem. You can see that in green right there in the center. The brainstem connects the brain to the spinal cord, and it controls the basic life-sustaining functions like heart rate, breathing, and sleep. It consists of 3 parts. The midbrain, you can see that's kind of closer to the bottom of the brainstem. That controls vision, hearing, and motor control. The pons, that is not labeled, but if you see that green label there that says brainstem and points to the big green lump in the middle of the brainstem, that is where the pons is located, and it helps to accelerate some signals between the brainstem and the rest of the brain. It relays signals between different parts of the brain and helps to regulate sleep and breathing. Finally, there at the bottom is the medulla oblongata. It manages essential functions like heart rate, blood pressure, and respiration. All of these things work together to keep you alive, moving, and alert, paying attention to things, and learning. You have to have so many processes throughout your body just to stay alive every single day. And it's just a wonderful and fascinating thing to study the brain and all the things which we have learned comparatively very little about how the brain really does function. But the very little that we do know about it is just astounding. We're also concerned not just with the brainstem, but also the hypothalamus. That is part of the orange lump you see right there in the middle, just above the brainstem. The hypothalamus is primarily responsible for maintaining what is called homeostasis, that is, a balance, in the body, meaning it helps to regulate crucial bodily functions like temperature, hunger, thirst, sleep cycles, and hormone use. It plays a key role in controlling the autonomic nervous system, which controls involuntary body functions, and the endocrine system, which controls hormone production. Why are we primarily concerned with the brainstem and the hypothalamus? Because the hypothalamus and brainstem are primarily responsible for producing dopamine and serotonin. The actual neurotransmitters of dopamine and serotonin are produced within those 2 things, and they are then spread around all throughout different parts of the brain. It is in different parts of the brain then that serotonin and dopamine are released, and where actually it takes effect and does the thing that we know that it does. Now we're going to go on to what are dopamine and serotonin. Dopamine and serotonin are 2 important neurotransmitters that help to regulate mood and signal when something feels good. Here's a picture of the process of a neurotransmitter that is being released from the axon that you can see on the left. It releases into the synapse. On the right, you see the dendrite. That is what receives the neurotransmitter. There's all the receptors that are on the dendrite that actually take hold of the neurotransmitter, and while they're there, they release that good feeling that we know. When we eat some really delicious carne pizza, you go, oh man, that's so good. I want to take a nap now instead of listening to this guy. But here I am stuck. After the neurotransmitter has been on the dendrite for a certain amount of time, it is released from the receptor. That's where it is then broken down. You can see the enzyme that destroys neurotransmitters and then reabsorbed back into the axon. That whole process is called the reuptake process because dopamine and serotonin and other neurotransmitters are actually continually recycled throughout your body, in your brain. And that's going to be important later on for how we understand the abuse of dopamine and how too much dopamine can then result in a lack of dopamine. And then kind of do what's called just a feedback loop. Feedback loop of constantly craving more and more dopamine, which is then relieved by an infinite scrolling on Facebook. Now on to the specialized cells that transmit electrical and chemical signals that we call, the chemical signals are called neurotransmitters, throughout the body, allowing us to think, feel, move, and respond to our environment. Once an electrical signal is built up enough in the axon, that's what causes the release of the neurotransmitter and makes it actually go out and cause something. This process happens incredibly fast and constantly throughout your entire brain. So when you're looking at it here, it looks like there might be some kind of slow thing, where you see cells just kind of slowly moving over here and there. It is lightning quick. The neuron consists of the cell body, the dendrite, receiving signals, the axon, the sending signals, and the axon terminals that release the neurotransmitters. Specifically now, when we're talking about serotonin and dopamine, there are other neurotransmitters as well, like glutamate, that is kind of the most abundant one that causes movement and thought and learning and things like that. There's norepinephrine, that's like alertness, attention, and things like that. There's several different types. Specifically serotonin and dopamine is what we're talking about, because this is what primarily affects your mood and your ability to focus and your motivation to go out and do something other than just sit there and watch YouTube for a long time. Serotonin is a neurotransmitter that, like dopamine, regulates mood and other bodily functions. Both hormones increase positive moods and emotions. Serotonin and dopamine both play a role in digestion and sleep. So, surprise, surprise, if you've ever wondered why we have such a problem with prescribed sleep aids in this country, and maybe you use them, I'm not saying they are an inherent bad, but they're certainly used quite a lot, probably more than they should be in this country. That's because we have a constant imbalance of serotonin especially, but as well as dopamine. Serotonin is connected to happiness and mood, while dopamine is associated with feelings of reward and motivation. So one example that my professor gave me is to understand kind of dopamine and serotonin compared to each other. If dopamine is the laugh, you hear a funny joke, oh, that is hilarious. Well, you don't just keep on going, about this joke. You laugh a little bit, if it's really funny, you'll laugh a little bit more. But then you'll keep on smiling after the joke. Man, what a joke. That was so funny. And then you may, remember it a couple days later and smile some more and so on and so forth. The laugh is the dopamine. There's an instant and relatively short reaction that happens in your brain. You go, oh, wow. When you take that bite of pizza, oh, it is so good. It's better when you take that first bite than when you're just sitting there and chewing it. By the time that you're done chewing it and ready to swallow, that dopamine is just kind of washed over you and gone back away. Serotonin, then, is that smile that lingers on a little bit longer. Serotonin is what helps you regulate your mood and keep you relatively happy and satisfied with life. You don't measure your happiness or your satisfaction based on how much you are constantly laughing, but rather just how much you smile, how you feel good, and so on and so forth. Well, these two neurotransmitters are similar. They work in different ways. The balance between these hormones is important as they sometimes work together, as we'll see in the next slide. And at other times, they inhibit or hold each other back. Too little of either hormone may cause mental health conditions. Changes in the brain caused by serotonin and dopamine. What dopamine does is it regulates sleep, it regulates your mood, making sure that you don't have too many big sleep swings or mood swings, going from really angry to really happy, and everywhere in between very quickly. Just more of a nice, smooth ride throughout the day. It also regulates your appetite and your hunger, making sure that you don't just want to go on constant, binge on this and then starve yourself and then binge on it again. It makes you feel full when you're actually eating. It helps your brain to recognize, oh, you're full now. You can stop eating. It also modulates pain. people who have a serotonin imbalance will feel pain in very different ways. Sometimes it will cause people to feel way too much pain, something that shouldn't cause that much pain, or vice versa, because there's not serotonin in it to communicate with your brain and tell you, hey, this is really painful. Something might hit you, and then a little while later, oh man, that's starting to really hurt. A lot of times you just happen, right? An imbalance in serotonin. It also improves cognitive function just by regulating your sleep, removing anything else from your life. Just going through a nice, smooth transition throughout your day. It helps you to remember things better. It helps you to think more clearly. If you've ever had, like a brain fog that's maybe caused by some bad sleep. Well, the bad sleep oftentimes will cause an imbalance in your serotonin, and that will just kind of carry throughout the day a little bit and cause your brain to just not work as good as it is. Dopamine then gives a feeling of reward and motivation. It reinforces learning and behavior. It regulates your mood and emotion. It influences cognitive function and influences mood. So you can see how there's a lot of overlap between serotonin and dopamine. They do really similar things, but they do it in different ways. Dopamine has a lot of a quicker of an actual reaction and effect on how you're feeling, what you're doing, and thinking throughout the day. Serotonin is very much more of a, like I said, the smile after the laugh. Where we get serotonin, what causes the release of serotonin and dopamine in our lives. Serotonin is released by exercise, exposure to sunlight, a healthy diet, socializing and positive relationships, physical touch, sleep, gratitude, and positive thinking. So, you'll probably already make a lot of those connections in your brain already. If you're sitting at home watching TV, or scrolling Facebook, or on your phone, or playing video games, or reading just a really, really good book, what is it that you are not doing? Probably not exercising as much. Probably not getting exposed to as much sunlight. A lot of times people who have addictions to all of these different dopamine and serotonin sources will not have a very healthy diet. They won't be out socializing or having positive relationships as much. You're stuck at home reading a book. You're not over having coffee with a friend. Physical touch, sleep, gratitude, and positive thinking. All these things are affected by technology. Technology that makes you avoid these things and therefore cause a lack or malproduction of serotonin. Dopamine, then, released by rewarding activities, pleasurable experiences, exercise, novelty and new experiences, anticipation and goal setting, social interaction, and physical touch. Well, technology doesn't really cause all of these things. Exercise obviously is one. Novelty and new experiences is probably kind of another one. Anticipation and goal setting is maybe. Social interaction. Sometimes technology can facilitate that. If you play online video games with your buddies or you're chatting with people through social media and stuff, but that's also different. It's a different type of social interaction that does not release the same amount of dopamine as well as does not release the same amount of serotonin. And of course, physical touch. Again, if you're sitting at home playing video games, you're not out there, shaking hands with your buddy or clapping each other on the back or anything like that. However, if technology does one of these things, a couple of these things, very, very, very well, rewarding activities and pleasurable experiences. Technology, especially video games and YouTube and TV and things like that, are absolutely geared for and designed to provide you with those rewarding activities and pleasurable experiences. A lot of times this is true of like little games on your phone as well, with the anticipation and goal setting. I don't know if you ever fell prey to any Facebook games back in the earlier days of Facebook where there'd be things like Farm Town or something Mafia, whatever that one was. I mean, there's all kinds of those different little games like that give you those constant rewarding activities and that anticipation and goal setting. Oh, if I plant this many plots of corn and potatoes, then in about this many hours, it'll be done and I can sell that for more money and then I can multiply how many seeds I can buy and then multiply how much corn I can plant. And then within the next 3 days, I'm going to have this much money and I can buy this next thing. And then all of these things are planned out and designed specifically to trigger that rewarding activity or the anticipation and goal setting thing that releases that dopamine. That makes it so addictive. Serotonin and dopamine are also released by technology, social media and instant gratification, gaming and reward systems, and music. You haven't noticed too, music is more accessible today than it has ever been in the past. I'm relatively young, but even the music industry in my lifetime has changed dramatically. When I was like 8 or 9 years old, I had to wait for a song to come on the radio and then take my tape recorder and put the microphone up to the radio and record this song by Blink-182 because I didn't have enough money to go and buy the CD for $5. And so then I would record it on that tape and I would just play it back over and over and be like, wow, technology is so amazing. I can record a song from the radio. But now, all you have to do is say, hey Alexa, play this song by this artist. Okay, playing this song by this artist. And it starts. Just like any song you can think of at any time in your life, you can play it. From practically any point in history as well. Technology makes those things so much more available, which is great, but sometimes also evil and nefarious. Which brings us to part 2 of this presentation. Technology, tool or device. I want to talk about the difference between a tool or device. What's a tool or device? And we're also going to talk about a word that you probably heard a lot in the past 4 or 5 years, the algorithm. And we're going to see how that affects what's called the dopamine feedback loop. So, starting with technology, tool or device. Before I go on, actually, are there any questions or comments or thoughts thus far? I don't want to just steamroll over anybody. If you have a thought, feel free to share it. Becca.
So I'd be curious as to your opinion on the correlation between technology and this increased dopamine serotonin response because of technology and not the advent, but the rise in ADHD and ADD.
That's a good question.
Because they both depend significantly on dopamine and serotonin and them being balanced.
I would say that ADHD and ADD, I think lately what they have been saying about it is that it is an what's the word that I want to use? It's an over efficiency in the reuptake process that I talked about earlier with serotonin, but especially with dopamine. So people with ADHD, they release, for example, dopamine, and before letting it really just kind of hang out there and linger on the receptor in order to actually do its work, it releases it too quickly and then is reprocessed too quickly. And people with ADHD find themselves with a lack of dopamine. So a lot of times if you see kids who are very hyperactive, it's not because they have too much energy, as I'm sure some people have heard many, many times. Oh, that kid's got too much energy. Let him run around outside a little bit. Well, that certainly can help sometimes, but the problem is just that they have a lack of dopamine. It's not producing as much or as quickly as they can reuptake it, so they're searching for another source of constant dopamine. So they shake their leg, they do all these things to stimulate a response of dopamine in their brain so that way they can actually focus. Now, I think a lot of times, I think a lot of times in this day and age, the prevalence of technology and screens in today's society causes not actually ADHD, but a dopamine addiction. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on, but if you overproduce dopamine, there's only so much dopamine your brain can actually create. And so when you're releasing too much dopamine by taking in too much of the technology or the screen, then that causes the dopamine level in your brain to just absolutely bottom out, which gives the same result of somebody with ADHD that doesn't have enough dopamine, but the source of it is actually something different. And it's a dopamine addiction rather than actually ADHD. But it looks the same, and doctors, I'm sure, not all of them, but I'm sure many of them are more than happy to take your money for ADHD medication. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, along with that, the ADHD response issue is that if there's a release of adrenaline, that will flood dopamine too. And it facilitates that. And so that's why when you have kids that don't seem to focus, but if you would yell at them, they get a hit of adrenaline, and then whoa, what? And then you got them for a moment because they have a little extra dopamine in there, and then it gets sucked back again.
Yes,
so
adrenaline is another big thing that affects a lot of that, which is also why a lot of people who are like adrenaline junkies probably also have a very high comorbidity rate with ADHD or ADD because of that over-efficiency in the reuptake process. But I didn't talk about adrenaline today because there's not that much adrenaline that goes on with technology when you're looking at YouTube on your phone, unless you really like those videos of the guys that like to jump across buildings and they're skyscrapers and stuff like that, which I don't. And neither does my wife.
There's kind of a subculture though of like the horror games.
The what?
Like the indie horror games.
Oh yeah.
That will get you adrenaline hits.
Yes.
So.
The horror genre of video games is absolutely tied very, very much to the adrenaline.
Yeah.
Okay. Great thoughts. Great questions. Anything else? Great. Moving on then. If you have to think of something, raise your hand or say something. So, technology, tool, or device. A tool is something that you control and does not act on its own without your influence. Think, for example, of a hammer. A hammer is a tool. It sits there unless you go over and grab it and smack a nail with it. Then when you put it back down, it stays there unless your kid takes it and runs off with it and leaves it somewhere else. But without that influence, hammer is a tool. It does not go anywhere or influence you. You influence it. By contrast then, a device is something that you can influence, but can also influence you and act on its own. Think obviously of your smartphone. It updates, it has apps, and those apps give you notifications and suggestions for other apps, and then advertisements for things that you could buy or download. And your phone also has the algorithm. You've heard of the algorithm probably many, many times with the advent of social media, especially recently, because there's been a lot of talk of how social media functions. It functions with algorithms that kind of tailor the experience to you specifically. An algorithm is a step-by-step procedure or set of rules used to solve a problem or complete a task. In the case of social media and technology, algorithms analyze large amounts of data to help make decisions about what content to show users and how to present that content in a way that is most engaging or useful. Really, they're a lot more concerned with the engaging part. So an algorithm takes your history. What do you like to look at on Facebook or on X or other social media? Also, the algorithm can track your activity practically wherever you go online. You go look at something on Amazon. A lot of times, Amazon and Facebook sell each other information. So then Facebook also knows that you look at this thing on Amazon, which is obviously why you're surfing Facebook. Hey, show me this advertisement for this book by Augustine. I wonder how it knew that. And it's even an advertisement for Amazon itself. Your algorithm continues to just tailor everything. specifically for you. Now, everybody's experience is going to be just a little bit different. When I go on Facebook, Facebook Marketplace always likes to show me cars and books and 3D printers. It likes to show my wife lots of other books, but then also other things like, plushies or other things from the YouTube creators that she likes to watch occasionally and things like that. Everybody's algorithm, it's tailored specifically for you. Social media platforms like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, etc. use algorithms to decide which posts to show you. These algorithms are designed to optimize user engagement and maximize time spent on a platform, which in turn increases the platform's ad revenue, which will then lead to the dopamine feedback loop. These companies really don't care about you. They just care about money and maximum engagement with their product. Because they're a business, of course they're really not going to care about it that much. Which is why I'm telling you about this. You can't rely on a company to do the thing that's right for you. You have to continually try to do the thing that's right for you and your kids. The company, the government, are not going to do the thing that is right for you and your kids. You have to stay really vigilant. So the dopamine feedback loop. Social media algorithms are designed to create positive feedback loops, which make users feel rewarded when they receive likes, shares, and comments. This provides a dopamine boost that reinforces the behavior, liking, posting, and sharing, that led to the reward. Over time, this can create addictive patterns. So obviously, if you post something on Facebook or your Twitter or whatever, if people go and like it, you go, oh, look, this person went and liked that, haha. It makes you feel good to have other people interacting with you and liking the things that you put out. There is also, on some websites, there is the opposite of that too. There is the things that cause cortisol to rise. That is the thing that makes you feel stressed. If you go onto websites like YouTube used to have this, they would have a like button, and also they still have it, but they don't show the dislike button. They don't show the number on the dislike button anymore. You know why? Because it would make some people feel sad or mad. And that's not a positive emotion. That's not dopamine being released into your system. That's not reinforcing you making another video that people are disliking. There's another website called Reddit that does a similar thing. They have what's called the upvote system, where it shows a total number there right by the post. If you click upvote on it, it goes 1. It goes up by 1. If you click downvote on it, it goes down by 1. And it's very popular over there, just to express your opinion with just upvoting or downvoting something without actually having to comment on it. What it's supposed to do is, put good content near the top for everybody to see. You put bad content down at the bottom for nobody to see. What it does is it just reinforces whatever is popular and most acceptable at the time, whatever the most people agree with. So what it's really turned into is just an absolute cesspool of liberal ideas and agendas. So if you have ever heard of Reddit and have never gone there, keep it that way. If you are on Reddit right now and still like to go, I would really encourage you to not, because it's just not a good website for a lot of reasons, for Christian reasons especially. After feeling, back to our slide here, after feeling the initial high, dopamine levels drop back below what is called the baseline or normal level of dopamine in the brain in order to maintain a type of homeostasis. This, in turn, causes a craving for more dopamine that is typically a hit from the same source again, social media, and the cycle continues until broken, usually by my wife saying, hey, can you come and help me with this? And I go, oh yeah, sure, and I put my phone back in my pocket. But it can be other things too. Some people, they very easily just look at a couple things on their phone, put it back in their pocket. Other people will get sucked in for absolute hours. dopamine at times. So when you're constantly telling it, hey, you need to give me more dopamine, give me more, it just creates this high and then this absolute low. While it's like, hey, dopamine stores are low right now, so I'm not releasing enough dopamine to keep you at your baseline. So when you're done getting a hit of dopamine off of social media or whatever, then you'll have a dip. For people who are very, very addicted, that dip goes way, way, way down low, and it causes them to crave again. So a lot of times, I don't know if you've seen, memes or jokes about people who go and they get off of, Facebook, or they close Twitter or something like that, and they go, oh, what was it that I was going to do again? Oh, here's my phone. Oh, Facebook is right there. And they just go back and open up Facebook again because their brain's going, dopamine's really low. You need something, pal. Otherwise, we're just going to die over here. Well, let's get some Facebook in here. Okay. It's the dopamine feedback loop. Excessive highs, really low lows that make you crave it, and goes back and forth, back and forth. Luckily, I put that in quotes, notice, for us, social media provides an infinite feed of content, curated just for us by the algorithm to keep us topped up on dopamine for as long as we want it. I've heard a lot of people use the term like a YouTube rabbit hole. They'll watch one video and then they'll go, oh, this other video looks really cool too. I'll click on that one next. And then another one that's also really cool. And YouTube is just absolutely spectacular at showing you stuff that you want to see. And so they'll keep doing that forever. Conclusion, my own. Phones are very obviously a device. Just there's kind of a spectrum of, tool, device, everything in between. Smartphones really not really but they're very solidly in the realm of a device. Things that operate on their own and influence you as much as possible. And a lot of times people will give them as much influence over themselves as they possibly can because it's fun and it feels good. Well, normally, this dopamine feedback loop would be something we can control easily. For example, binge watching TV was not as widespread of an issue as smartphone addiction. The smartphone is more of a device than a tool. Notifications, updates, and content curated for us are actively pulling us back in. Comparatively, the TV is relatively inactive. It's off until turned on. Content is curated according to channel rather than by your own personal algorithm. Your phone gives you a notification whether or not you have the screen on right there. Of course, you can turn it off completely, but then how would you get texts and phone calls, right? You've got to keep it on. You've got to keep it on your person, otherwise you'll miss something. And while it's on your person, do you mind if we send you push notifications as well? And so your phone is constantly acting kind of against you to try to pull you back in and get your attention back towards it. Finally, the third part here, we are running right on time. A godly use of technology. Looking first at Ephesians 5:11 through 14a. Take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness, but instead expose them. For it is shameful even to speak of the things that they do in secret. But when anything is exposed by the light, it becomes visible. For anything that becomes visible is light. So, like I said at the beginning, I want you to just be as aware of this entire process as possible, knowing exactly the effect that they try to have on you. If you expose this, you become aware of it and you can act on it. And you can act on it with your kids as well. Luke 21:34 through 36. But watch yourselves, lest your hearts be weighed down with dissipation and drunkenness and cares of this life, and that day come upon you suddenly like a trap. For it will come upon all who dwell on the face of the whole earth. But stay awake at all times, praying that you may have strength to escape all these things that are going to take place, and to stand before the Son of Man. If you're not careful how you use these things, it's very easy to get sucked into them and before you know it, you are dissipating your life away by paying too much attention to these things. That happens a lot with kids these days. Like I said, I'm sure, company excluded, present company excluded, but you see it all the time with kids that are completely and totally addicted to their screens or to their phones. Colossians 3:23-24. Whatever you do, work heartily, as for the Lord and not for men, knowing that from the Lord you will receive the inheritance as your reward. You are serving the Lord Christ. Keeping that in mind always is very, very good and very, very necessary in a world that seeks to constantly distract you. Whatever you do, work heartily. Do things with intention, not with, I'm just going to waste a little bit of time over here or over there. Be intentional about the time that you spend in your free time, the time that you spend with your kids, and especially the free time that your kids spend as well. All right, technology on a leash. It's important to keep technology on a leash. Like I said, a lot of times it's really easy to give technology as much influence over your life as it wants because it feels good and it helps you out with certain things, right? I have a smartwatch because a lot of times I would miss phone calls or texts with my phone being in my pocket because I would always turn it on silent so that way it didn't disrupt other things that I'm doing. But then I would be missing calls and texts. So I have a smartwatch so I don't miss those important things. But I've turned off everything else. It doesn't give me notifications about emails or apps or anything else at all. I strictly just use it for texts and phone calls. So that, if I'm writing, I can check, is this an important text? Nope, all right, I'm going to keep on going then. And it allows me actually to ignore the stuff on my phone way easier because I can filter it out like that. So keep watch of your own usage and your kids' usage of technology. It's good to be a model. If you're telling your kids, hey, don't spend too much time on Facebook while you're scrolling Facebook, they're going to see what you are actually doing, not what you are telling them. It's good to turn off notifications of pleasure-seeking apps, especially, for example, social media. There's nothing that important going on social media that you need the notifications for. If there's something that you really like to just do for fun on your phone, just make it as small as possible. Keep as tight of a leash on it as you can so it doesn't distract you, and especially distract your kids more than it absolutely has to. Turn on app timers if you have to. A lot of phones, you can go into the settings and go into the individual apps and turn on an app timer, that says after 1 hour of use or 30 minutes of use or 15 minutes, then it will automatically kick you out and not let you get back into it until the next day or the next time that the timer resets. So if you or your kids or somebody else has a hard time with getting off of something after they get onto it, app timers can be really useful. For your kids especially. A lot of times you need to get a hold of your kids if they're going around to different places and activities and things. So they have to have some kind of phone or a way for you to get a hold of them. Parental controls are going to be totally useful. And I can't give you specific examples because, like with each phone, they vary wildly. But I very much encourage you to learn how they work on your kids' phones. If they have to have a phone, go into it, research it, look at all the settings, read what everything does, set it up the best way for you and for your kids. If you really don't understand it, you can go on YouTube and you can watch a helpful video of how to turn on parental controls on your kids' phones. It's also good to keep track of your screen time as well. Most phones today, they will record how long you spend in each individual app on your phone. At the end of the week, sometimes they'll give you a report. Oh, you spent this much time on your phone. And you can go get a detailed report that shows how much time you spent in each individual app. If you're somebody that time gets away from them very quickly on those apps, make it a point. Go and look at it every week. And if you're horrified by it, do something to change it. Finally, be intentional. It's far too easy to sit down and fritter away the time when instead you could be doing something helpful or good or learning or spending time with your kids in a positive way. But just sitting down and going, I'm going to look at my phone for a little while, it's not very helpful. Much more helpful to actually be intentional. Pay attention to how you are spending your time and do it in a way that you actually want, not just in a way that sounds fun. All right, that gets me out of here just in time. I do have time for any questions. If anybody has any questions or thoughts raised by anything that I've said. Go ahead.
Just as a technology professional, you gotta be careful with VPNs too, because people can use VPNs to get around the stuff that's blocking them. So if your kid's using a VPN, they can get around location blocking, basically. So if something's blocked in Lincoln, Nebraska, they can use a VPN to make it look like they're in Russia and access the stuff that they're blocked from.
Yeah, you want to give a short explanation, like just a little bit more of what a VPN is?
It's basically a virtual private network. It basically is supposed to encrypt your data and protect it, but also can make you look like you're in a different location than what you actually are. So basically you're connecting to a server in a remote location, and then that remote location is actually accessing the website. And then the website information goes back to that remote location and it goes back to you. So your internet service provider can see that you're using a VPN, but they don't know what you're accessing because you're going to a separate server and then accessing the data.
Okay. Thanks, Alan. Yeah. Yeah, if your kids can get a little bit more sophisticated with their phone usage, there's a lot of ways to circumvent parental controls. But it's really important to also just talk with your kid. I mean, I don't know anybody in this room that would have a problem with, being a tyrant or anything like that. But it's good to talk with your kid and teach them why you are doing what you are doing. Hey, listen, technology can get out of hand really, really easily and really, really quickly. So it's good for us to keep as firm of a leash on it as possible, because I don't want you, child, to fall into that trap. Okay, what other thoughts? Go ahead.
So there are apps, like if you like to use things like YouTube, but you don't want YouTube to know all about you, there are apps that you can use that will, like you go through that app and watch YouTube videos, and you can subscribe to channels, but then it doesn't track what you're watching and then suggest things for you, right? So the one that I really like is GrayJ, because you can actually use Rumble, YouTube, Twitch, like most of the video streaming platforms, you can actually use all of those, and it will bring all of those into one app for you. You can really quickly check to see if any of them have a new video, close it, done, right? Or like, oh, there's one video I want to watch that video, move on. It doesn't have all these recommendeds and stuff like that, and it's not following you. All of it stays on your phone or on your desktop, and it keeps it private for you.
Yeah, it's a great way to circumvent the algorithm as much as possible, so that you're just using your phone as a tool as much as possible.
There's no ads, there's none of that.
Rather than letting it run rampant. Thank you. That's helpful. Okay. What other thoughts or questions? Go ahead.
So we actually got rid of our TV quite a while ago and replaced it with a projector. So one of the things that we found is, kids like all of us they see a screen and they go, oh, glowing golden God, tell me what to do, And as parents, obviously, when you're tired, you're stressed, you're trying to make supper, whatever, you're just like, oh my gosh, I just need you to sit still for 10 seconds. But what we realized is that even when it's off, it's still a device because they're drawn to it. Like we all are. Your phone doesn't have to be on you for you to go, where's my phone?
Yeah.
And by getting rid of it, taking it off the wall, it gets put away, is just one more of those things that kind of keeps it on a leash, because the kids are like, when it does come out, they're like, whoa, cool, it's a treat. Versus, oh, it's there, we won't use it. Not so much a question, but more just a thought for the other parents who are like, hey, we don't have a problem with technology, but we do want to rein it in, and we want to make sure that we're very careful about how we teach them to appreciate it and to respect its use. And that's one of the ways that we have found is a good way to obtain it, where it's like, hey, it is a treat, but it's also not a given, and it's not something we're just gonna flip it on and sit down and veg for 10 hours a day.
That's a great method, and that's a great observation too. Just the presence of the technology itself, without even being on, can be a draw. I can't tell you how many times I've just had my phone on the table and off, and if I'm at my parents' house or my brother's house or whatever, and my nephew will come over, oh, can we watch tractors? Oh, let's watch tractors on YouTube. No, sorry, buddy, that's going in my pocket. Oh, but I want to watch tractors. Sorry, no, I'm not going to do it.
I'm not a parent, so I don't know half of the things that you have to go through, but I understand that cyberbullying is real, so I just want to emphasize to have those conversations with your kids where they can talk to you about anything, even though what they might trip into could be bad, because that's where we get these things of suicides happening. I've experienced cyberbullying myself, and it kind of made me understand, like, in my adult brain, thinking of myself as being in a kid's brain, and how a kid would react to what I had to react to in real time. And I decided as an adult, being like, I can either let these people bother me right now, or I can be like, this is happening. Whereas to a kid, it might be something that they want to like take control of or handle because they've done something that their parents wouldn't approve of. And then it just spirals into, I have to wash myself clean of this by erasing myself. You know what I mean? And erasing myself means to kill myself. So I just, because I've had my friends that have told me that their kids have gone through similar situations within what they were dabbling in online, but they did have that relationship with their parents to go to their parents, and their situation did not end badly. Where I've listened to a lot of talks where, in retrospect, it's somebody from another country that is trying to coerce the kid into giving money, or else we're going to tell, and so they get into this situation where they're just like, I don't know how to handle this on my own.
Yeah.
And my parents are going to be very, very mad at me if they know that I did this.
That's a great point too, Karen. It's really good to pay attention to what your kids are doing online on the computer, because it's easy for them to get into situations they don't understand. And if they're not comfortable talking about it, or they feel like they've done something wrong, they've gone to a website they know they shouldn't have gone to, they'll go, oh, but now if I tell my parents, they're going to be mad at me and I'm going to get in trouble, so I can't do that. I have to find some way out of it on my own. And that could just lead to a lot of tragic situations. So one way that a lot of people have mitigated that aspect of it is the feeling of, oh, my online time is my own private time, is by putting the, however you access internet in a public place. When your kids come home from school or from wherever they've been, the phone goes on the counter because they don't need it while they're at home. You don't need to get a hold of them, right? So walk in the door, they plug in the charger, and they leave it there, and that's that, because it's not their own private access to the internet. It is very much an open, non-private thing. Or put the family computer in the living room, right, where other people will sit and see what they're doing and how long they're on and all that kind of thing. Just the fact of being public, not my own little private time on my own private little computer, helps to alleviate a lot of those things too. Go ahead.
So one more observation, and sorry guys, I'm going to pick on the men for 1 second, only because statistically it's been proven that it affects men more than women. But like rewiring the brain with social media time, men in the restroom. So they've been doing a lot of studies recently about men phone use in the restrooms, because especially when like husbands get home, they've had a long day at work, they are tired, they're emotionally spent, they walk in the door, their wives are going, I need you. Kids are going, Daddy, and they just go, bye.
Not, this isn't personal experience or anything. Hypothetically speaking.
Hypothetically speaking, no, for his, I will say, Victor's pretty good about walking in the door, and he's like, do you need 20 minutes? I'm like, bye! No.
God bless him for that.
God
He's
bless
not
him.
here, so I can say it.
But I won't tell him he said anything. But really, what they've studied is it especially affects men, because men will come home and that's like their refuge time, right? But it's rewiring their brains, because then instead of going into the bathroom, using the bathroom and coming out, what they do is they're training their brains that this dopamine and serotonin response comes from alone time, not from being with their families. And it's really, really dangerous. You know, moms, we don't necessarily have that because we've got the fingers coming out of the door going, Mommy, why are you in the bathroom alone? You know, and so it's, you know, I get the knock on the door if I've been in there for 5 minutes because I'm like checking my hair and Trump's like, are you alive? Are you alive? But the way that it's retraining men's brains specifically is they're getting that dopamine hit when they're alone, which then they're correlating that to other very nefarious uses of internet, social media, those kinds of things, because what their brains are associating is, I'm only resting, I'm only relaxing, I'm only in my me time when I'm alone, and that is very dangerous, especially for the male brain because of the way that it works. And it's led to some very disconcerting studies about like how that leads into that negative use of the technology.
I'm sure that there's a very high use of pornography in situations like that too, which I didn't talk about in this class just because Pastor Moline already did 2 entire sessions on pornography, so I'm sure that a lot of you are just tired of hearing the word pornography by now. So that is an entire other section that we could do on, you know, how technology has allowed unfettered access to pornography, which affects men's and women's sex drives and their inability to actually pursue after one another, because why pursue a partner with whom you can have a healthy sexual relationship with when you can just do a similar thing that releases a similar chemical and hormone and neurotransmitter right there on your phone in your pocket at any time. So that was a whole avenue I thought about going down, but obviously I had plenty of material for the time that we had anyway, so go ahead.
If you want for yourself or for on the phone that can only text and call, there are some of those out there. There's something called a light phone that's like an e-ink screen, like a Kindle, and all it does, it has like texting, calling, you can put music on there if you want, and that's just about it. So those are helpful too.
Yes, thank you for mentioning that. I meant to bring that up too here in this section. If you didn't hear her, there are phones that do just let you call and text, and they've recently just come out with ones that also have GPS on them too, if that's another thing that you're worried about. They're called light phones. A lot of my buddies in seminary have those, and they just totally loved them and told everybody about them. Light phones. That can be really handy to get to your kids to go from that transitionary period from, you know, being at home, not needing a phone, to now they're out doing stuff without me. I need to get a hold of them. A light phone can be that good transitory period. Go ahead.
Sorry, last thing in 10 seconds, I swear. Bark phones also.
Park phone?
Bark,
Bark.
like dog. Bark
Okay.
phones.
B-A-R-K.
They are entirely 100% parental control.
Nice.
So if you do have a kid who's transitioning into needing a phone, that is like child law enforcement. That's what they recommend for parents is bark phone.
Bark phone and light phones. Okay. Awesome. Good thoughts, good discussions. What other questions or thoughts anybody have before we end? Okay. Well, my closing thoughts and comments. It's really important to teach your kids the right use of technology, because like I said, regardless, they're going to come across it, whether it is, you know, if they go off to high school somewhere, or if they go off to college somewhere, or if they're leaving the house, or even still in the house and their friends have something. Technology is really not something that can be hidden at this point. It's okay to shield your kids from those things, but you know, the point of a shield is to prepare yourself and defend yourself from something bad and prepare to attack back. When you're shielding your kids, it's not just an attempt to never let them find out about it. It is to keep them close to you so you can educate them and prepare them to go out into a world that wants to take their attention at every second of every single day. In the same way, when we are here at church, you are shielding them from a lot of bad things that can happen other places while they're still learning about what they are and how to deal with them when they do come across them. So it's a good idea to teach your kids about technology, not just keep it completely out of their lives. But it is up to you ultimately to make sure that they know what the right and the wrong use of technology is, because school is probably not going to teach them this stuff. The government, the companies that are trying to sell these things are not going to teach them this stuff. This is you. And it's very important while their brains are still very high in neuroplasticity and they're making connections of neurons in their brain just like absolute wildfire to make them good, God-pleasing connections in their brain, not bad ones. Okay, let's close with the Lord's Prayer. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation,